A student looked at me with quiet concern and asked a question I wasn't ready for. Are you okay? You don't seem like yourself. She was right. I wasn't collapsing. I wasn't in crisis. But something in me had dulled. A subtle offness, the kind that sneaks in at the edges before you realize it's there. At the time, I was still a professor. I had spent years immersed in ethnomusicology, in sound, story, and ritual, work I once found sacred. But somewhere along the way, the spark had faded. I was tired in a way that wasn't physical, untethered, a little apathetic, a little worn thin. She hesitated, then said, I think my mom could help you. I remember raising an eyebrow. Isn't your mother a witch? She laughed. Not really. She's an intuitive healer. What she does is weird, but it works. I was skeptical, but I trusted her, and I was tired enough to try. So I went, and that first session didn't change everything, but something softened. My breath dropped into my body in a way it hadn't for months. I felt held gently without demand. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to explain or prove anything. To my surprise, it helped. And here's what I didn't realize then. This moment, this quiet, unexpected return to myself, would become a thread running through the next 20 years of my life. Fast forward a decade. Last December, I wasn't falling apart then either. No crisis, no dramatic unraveling, just off. Foggy, irritable, exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't touch. My attention scattered across too many browser tabs and border crossings. A low hum of heaviness that clung to everything. There were reasons, of course, navigating citizenship and death paperwork in 2 countries, a postal strike that trapped our passports, Christmas travel collapsing in real time, my eldest college applications hanging in limbo, and another holiday without my husband. Nothing catastrophic, just an accumulation of emotional residue, the kind that builds quietly under the surface until you barely recognize your own center of gravity. And when you've done the work, the journaling, the therapy, the routines, it can feel maddening to still feel stuck, or low, or not quite here. But this is where the deeper truth began to land for me. Healing doesn't require a crisis. Sometimes it begins with a quiet need. One of the things I tell my clients, partly because I need to hear it too, is this. Your body is unimpressed by your logic. It doesn't care that you understand your trauma. It doesn't care that you've articulated your childhood in exquisite detail. It doesn't care that you've built a competent, beautiful life around old wounds. Your body cares about one thing, what feels safe. And for many of us, especially those who live in our minds, who lead with curiosity, intellect, and reflection, safety becomes tied to familiarity, even when what's familiar is tension, or overthinking, or carrying things that were never ours to hold. This is where so many healing methods fall short. They ask us to understand our way out, but healing often begins long before understanding, before the story, before analysis, before words. It begins in the body, in the subtle recalibrations that tell your nervous system, you can come home now. For a long time, I thought I had to choose between intellect and intuition. That to soften into healing meant shutting off my mind, becoming someone I wasn't. But I've learned through research, through practice, through lived experience, that the opposite is true. You don't have to choose. You can be reflective and receptive, curious and grounded, analytical and intuitive. In fact, the mind and the body often want the same thing, to exhale, to stop bracing, to stop managing everything through thought and give the body room to lead for a moment. When I began doing my own healing work, and later when I began training in it, something clicked that had been waiting for years. Healing wasn't new to me. It was always in the room, in the all-night sings, in the rituals I attended but didn't write about, in the questions I asked, and the ones I was too academic to admit mattered. It wasn't that I suddenly believed in something mystical. It was that I recognized something I had felt all along. As my student said when I began training with her mother, "You've been circling around this like a shark for years." She was right. Healing, as I understand it now, isn't about fixing or transcending or striving to become some imagined better version of yourself. Healing is a return to harmony, a return to the place inside you where honesty feels safe, where softness feels possible, where you can tell the truth without collapsing under the weight of it. It doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means the presence of the capacity to feel, to soften, to meet yourself with clarity and compassion, to notice the moment when something shifts, when you suddenly recognize, oh, I feel more like myself. That's healing. Later, when I trained formally, Heart Metta became one of the tools I reached for most, not because the name means anything to most people, but because of how the method works. Think of it as a way of clearing emotional residue, a recalibration for the nervous system, a reset that doesn't require you to relive anything. We don't dig, we don't diagnose, we don't rehash the worst things that ever happened. We work with breath, intention, and language patterns that speak to the part of you that already knows it's time to let go. If traditional therapy is the front door of the mind, Heart Metta moves through the quieter pathways, the ones that hold the real clutter. And for many people, even skeptical ones, something shifts, sometimes in minutes, sometimes more slowly. But the shift is real, a softening where there was tension, a loosening where there was bracing, a return where there was absence. Because when the nervous system gets the signal that it's safe to soften, everything changes. If there is one thing I want viewers, clients, readers, students, anyone walking their own path to understand, it is this. You don't have to be in crisis to begin healing. You don't need to believe in anything mystical. You don't need to have a 5-point plan. You only need a moment of honesty, a small exhale of truth. I don't feel like myself. I'm tired of carrying this. I want to return. That's enough. That's the doorway. So if you're watching this and something in you feels that quiet tug, not urgency, not overwhelm, just a subtle yes, this space is for you, not to fix you, not to transform you into someone else, but to help you return to the harmony that has always been yours. I'm glad you're here. Let's walk this path with steadiness and skill together.